Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another chapter chat with a quick info session. Today, we're going to talk about how to get eminent engineers for your chapter. And I can't move the slides, so you're going to do that for me. If you hit the QR code or use the code that's on the next slide at the top, you can join the Menti because we'll have a couple of questions as we move along. So first, when you hear the term eminent engineers, what kind of comes to mind? And we'll give you 60 seconds or something to put in a few words and we'll see what the results are. All right, so you can keep answering. We've got a few different words here. Accomplished, well-rounded, experienced. That's a great one. So let's go to the next slide and see how TBP defines eminent engineers. So essentially what eminent engineers are people who have been successful and contributed to the engineering field as a whole. If it's somebody who was an engineer in undergrad, then if they've worked for 10 years in the field, they're eligible to be an eminent engineer. If it's someone who graduated in some other field, but now works in engineering, they are also eligible. So you can look for people all over the place that would be good candidates, but the goal here is to find people who are uplifting the field of engineering as they move through their careers. And then, of course, as with all other candidates in TBP, we also want them to have exemplary character. And you can find more about initiating eminent engineers in the info book about membership, but we'll talk a little bit through the whole process as we move forward as well. So let's go to the next slide. So where do you think you might be able to find an eminent engineer? And again, we'll give you a few minutes to fill this out, or a few seconds to fill this out, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we see. We've got a lot of good answers here. One of my least favorite things about word clouds is that typos really stick out. But we've got a few answers here. Community members, that's great. So if you know people that you live near or work with, you can work with them. Professors are a great place. So usually chapters have a list of the professors in their department who are already members, so you can look at the other ones. And then the obvious answer based on the title of this session is your deans. So if your engineering dean isn't a member, that is the absolute first place I would go. Talk to them. For instance, the chapter that I initiated in, our dean was actually a computer scientist, but because he was the chair of the engineering department and had been working in the engineering department for over a decade, even though our chapter didn't usually do computer science, we were able to initiate the dean into a eminent engineering position as well. Another place that I love to look is your alumni. So people who have graduated from your chapter and are still involved, or not graduated from your chapter, but from your college and are still involved. So they may be coming back for recruiting fairs, which is also here, or other organizations that you're part of, whether it be IEEE, NSBE, SWE, I forget what the chemical engineering one is, but any of those groups, BMES for biomedical engineering, people who are involved with those who aren't necessarily TBP members would be other great opportunities. And then when you go and do your internships, who are your mentors? Who are the people that you're working next to that you really find interesting, helpful, and respect a lot as you're moving forward? Let's do the next slide.
Tonya, we have a question from the audience.
Oh yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so what is the advantage of initiating an eminent engineer? Why would you want to initiate your dean?
So for your dean specifically, It really helps you get visibility with them. It helps them understand what TBP is about if they haven't been actively involved. And then when you need things or you want connections into the college, you can say, we initiated you, you know us, we've been connected. So that's always great. If you need more advisors, eminent engineers are a great way to bring some people in who want to be involved and want to work with students who could potentially be advisors. And then, the secret special thing is that you also get extra bonus points for your chapter excellence awards. Not that that should be the reason, but it is another little bit of a bonus point. Do we have any other questions? Okay, moving right along. So now that you've identified some spaces to look for eminent engineers, what do you want to do to reach out to them? I know reaching out to people and asking them to join something can be really scary, but it's not as bad as you think. The absolute worst thing that could happen is they say no, and then you're no worse off than you are now. We talked a little bit about the different places where you could find them. So a lot of those times, those will be personal connections. So it may be somebody you know and already have a relationship with. So you can talk to them about your experience with TBP and why you think it's important and how you think it helps students and helps you in your career as well. Um, this is, an opportunity to be honored a little bit. They're part of the initiation. The students get to see them. They'll get to talk more with the chapter as well. So the idea is that we're honoring these engineers who have been working in their fields. Um, Again, if they're personal connections, why did you want to ask them? What was it about them that made you go, I really think you would be part of TBP and I think you could be helpful to us? Um, Talk about what TBP does. Uh, what types of community service does your chapter do? What types of things they do with the students to help in the college? Where could that eminent engineer continue to help and support your chapter as well? And then once, if they're interested, you can talk them through what the process will look like. Any questions or if anyone tried to do this before and wants to share their experience?
Yeah, I'd agree with the personal connections thing for sure because that's what our chapter is doing this semester. Is we do like professor coffee chats, and one of our returning professors is currently leading a NASA mission, and but she had a degree in space physics, so she wasn't eligible. So we're going to ask her this semester. So definitely the personal connections with the chapter is a good place to start.
That sounds like those coffee chats seems like a really cool event and in and of itself as well.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So good luck with that. I
Thank
can
you.
share um, some people that I've recruited for the chapter that I initiated in. I'm also part of the executive women's group in our engineering college, which is an alumni group. So I reached out to all of those ladies because they're active in the chapter or active in the college. And several of them are interested in being initiated. And they're all well into their careers, so very much into the qualified space. So we're working through that process of getting them connected, but they were really excited about the opportunity. You want to go ahead to the next slide?
Oh, and another question
Oh,
just come
sorry.
up. So I understand it's an honor for them to join Tau with a Pi, but are they required to do activities in the club? Like, what are some requirements there once they join?
So that will be somewhat dependent on the chapter. We'll talk a little bit about the initiation process in a little bit, but it is very similar to what it is for any other candidate as far as that's concerned. Generally, chapters won't do the same if there's activities that are required for initiates. They'll usually let the eminent engineers skip those if they'd want. Um, and then after they're initiated, it would be up to whatever the active membership in your chapter is. So if they want to be active members and participate in everything, you can hold them to some of the same standards. Or again, if you make them an advisor, whatever the responsibilities are for the advisor would be their space. But you still should have some way in the initiation process of determining their character. A lot of times with you have these personal connections, there'll be someone who kind of has done some of that work for you already. Not sure if I answered your question or not, but let me know if I didn't, and we can try to talk through it some more.
That's pretty good. Thank you.
All right, the initiation process will look somewhat similar to what you do with all of your student candidates as well, with a couple of little exceptions. You're identifying your candidates, and we just talked about that process. And then it is up the advisory committee of your chapter to determine if they're eligible or not. So they'll look at, their history, their degrees, things like that, to verify, at least at the chapter level, that you think they're eligible. Then you can connect with them and ask them to initiate. You will need a copy of their CV or resume to turn in with the report of eligibility. And there is a different form if you haven't done alumni or eminent engineers before. There is a paper form for their eligibility that needs to be turned in at least 2 weeks before the election, so 2 weeks before you vote, because there are additional checks that headquarters will do, namely to see if they were eligible when they were undergraduates, because they may be able to be initiated as an alumni then instead of an eminent engineer, and a few things like that. But you do need to make sure that that gets in with plenty of time. I would honestly say 3 weeks just to be safe, but 2 weeks is the deadline that's on that. I did hear rumors that HQ is working on a electronic version of that eligibility report, but I wasn't able to confirm it was done quite yet, but it should be coming. And then once HQ is given their approval, which they'll do right along with your approval of other candidates, they go through election just like your other candidates. So your chapter should vote on them. It's usually a separate block when you do the elections with your members, and then they get initiated along with all the other electees. There is a separate section of the initiation process that speaks to eminent engineers. So again, if you haven't done this, you probably are just skipping that section each time you go through the initiation process, but you would read through it. They make the same pledge as all the other candidates with just a little bit of a mentoring type of frame to it because they are experienced now and not candidates at an undergrad or graduate level. Any questions on the initiation process?
Yeah, so what would you do if the eminent engineer candidate is too busy to attend the initiation that you're holding?
So there's a couple options you could do. Just like with regular candidates, you could delay them until the following semester and initiate them then. Or you can talk with other chapters nearby to see if they could attend one of their initiations. Or if they're out of town, you can send a message to HQ to ask for a hybrid initiation, but those are very limited right now, so you have to get advance permission to do that. Any other questions?
What is the advisory committee, by the way?
So every chapter should have an advisory committee. It's defined in your bylaws. And you're putting me on the spot, so I may not quite get this right, but it should be your 4 voting advisors. That's probably with most chapters all the advisors they have. You can technically have more advisors, but only 4 of them are on the advisor committee. And then some of the officers of your chapter, I think, and this is where I may not be quite right, it's the president, treasurer, corresponding secretary, and maybe one more.
I believe it's president, vice president, and corresponding secretary because we just looked into this.
Thank you.
No problem.
And they should be meeting, I think, at least once a semester. But you can call special meetings for things like this if you need to. Anything else? All right. Let's see the next slide. So some other things just to keep in mind as you go through this process. I already mentioned that you do get bonus points for your chapter excellence scoring, so that's always great. Recruiting an eminent engineer could be something you put in your project report as well, which can also help toward your chapter excellence. It's a great way to look at diversity in your chapter. I don't remember if I introduced myself at the beginning of this. I meant to. But one of the things I do with TBP is I am on the DEI committee at National, which is part of why I'm partnering with ChapDev today to do this session, to give chapters some information on how they could add some diversity to their chapters. We already talked about a little bit that these people could become advisors, but also your advisors or alumni who have graduated recently could be great places to find additional candidates if your student members don't have any ideas. Where I am, there's a huge alumni chapter, so that's a great place. So they may have coworkers or people that they've worked with in the past that they think would be good candidates, but they can't initiate them themselves. They have to be initiated at a local chapter. So they would need the college chapter to go through the process with them if they identify some people. And also, if you have alumni chapters nearby, ask them for help to get you through the process. They may be a good person to kind of partner or handhold the initiate or the eminent engineer candidate kind of through the process and help them understand what's going on. Make it as simple as possible. Again, these are working professionals, so they have busy lives. If they're interested in being part of this and helping with the chapter, they probably are volunteering in other spaces as well. So if you can keep it as clean and simple as possible, that's helpful. And then I already said this earlier, but don't be afraid to ask people. Literally, the worst that could happen is they say no, and then you just go about your life. Anybody in the crowd who's done this before, do you have other tips that I missed?
Yeah, I would say the big one, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but there is that thing where if they have 15 years of engineering experience, they're eligible, regardless of whatever their major was. So I'd say that's a really good place to look for people if you know people who fit that criteria.
Yeah, I love that. I want to find all the NASA engineers and get them initiated. All right, I think the last thing we have is just Q&A. So is there any other questions that have come up? Oh, we do have another Menti question. Let's do that. So this should be on your thing if you logged in the Menti before. If not, you can use the code at the top. Just go to menti.com. While we're waiting for answers, this is my favorite Menti tool because it gives you so much information in one little picture. So you can see where the answers are and also what the median is, or the mean is of the answers for any statistics nerds out there. All right, so it sounds like we've got some experts in the room already who know how to do eminent engineers. Some people with ideas, which is awesome, and then some people who are interested in putting it into your goals. So that's excellent, and I'm excited to hear about all the new eminent engineers that people are initiating. So now I think we're just down to Q&A. So does anyone else have questions or things that came up? All right, I'm not seeing any. So thank you all for joining me. Again, I apologize for not introducing myself. My name is Tonya Whitehead. I am an advisor at Michigan Delta, and a former TBP laureate, a former district director, and current DEI committee member for TBP. If you have any questions, I'm always happy to answer them and look forward to seeing you guys hopefully at a convention coming up soon. Take care.